Fantastic. We're live. So a big hello, big shout out to, first of all, hello healthcare, hello LinkedIn, hello YouTube, however you're consuming this, however you're watching this. We're really glad that you have committed to some learning and committed to some seeing what other people in the industry and in other industries are doing. So to that end, we're really excited. Alan Tam is our VP of Marketing, first of all.
Hello.
So quick greetings from Allentown. But if you have heard, if you are a data enthusiast, if you're listening, if you're keeping track of how data, how AI, how these different platforms and new technology can help you in marketing or what have you, you might have heard of the of the Marketing Over Coffee podcast. So that's Christopher Penn. We're extremely happy to have him on because he represents a crossroads of many areas, only a few of which I'm going to touch on right now, but founder of Trust Insights, which delivers data-driven marketing experiences for their clients. He's the chief data scientist as well, and also extremely involved in marketing. So what we thought, being in healthcare, was that Christopher represents a really good crossroads where there's rock stars, there's people that are doing amazing things inside of healthcare, but there's also lots of lessons to be learned. Like with marketing being relatively new within healthcare, there's lessons to be learned from people who have lots of experience outside of healthcare. Christopher, you're going to find in the conversation, not just outside of healthcare, but definitely straddles that line. So lots of healthcare knowledge and background, but cross industry experience and trends. So Chris, with that, just wanted to give you the opportunity, intro, hello, anything that you want to say before we go ahead and get to the juicy stuff.
Hello, let's get to the juicy stuff.
All right. Well, hey, and also for anybody watching, this is a conversation. This is an opportunity. So the way that we like to set this up, the way we like to do this is because it's a LinkedIn Live format. We want you to ask questions. We want you to share stories, whatever resonates with you or whatever is making sense to you. Give us feedback. Let us know, because what the reason we're excited to have Christopher up here is not just me and Alan talking to him, but also the interactions and what you can learn from him. So feel free. We prepped him. He said he's ready for your questions, so we're good to go. So just to get started, Chris. So as a marketer, founder, data science leader, data science communicator, that's a rare and awesome combination. What got you started down this path? Like, how did you get started with this?
So the easiest way to explain it is that I started as a technologist. So I was back in the early 2000s. I was an IT person first. And hey, Janae, hey, Terry. When I joined a startup, I was the chief technology officer. I was the guy who ran the servers and things. And what happened over that decade was technology became marketing technology, and update the web server became update the website. Operate send mail became send the email newsletter. And that was my first pivot into marketing technology. In 2005, Google bought this company called Urchin that made a web analytics package. And it used to be egregiously expensive, $5,000 a month for the server. And they said, okay, we're going to buy this. We're going to make it free to the world. And they did in this product called Google Analytics. Over the next 6 years, they evolved it. They evolved it until in 2011, they rolled out probably the most substantial thing they did until recently, which was assisted conversions, to be able to help marketers understand, hey, here's what's helping out making your digital marketing more powerful. And of course, 2007 saw the launch of these lovely devices that now are literal addictions, making the offline world online. And so after in the 2010s, spent a lot of time working on data. How do we take this data and make it useful to marketers? How do we build attribution models? And that's in the early 2010s, 2011, 2012, I started digging into statistical programming, machine learning, data science. And then for the last 8 years, that's been sort of the path I've been on is, okay, these are points of data that we have as marketers. How do we make use of it? And that's how we got here today.
Excellent. Well, really happy that you shared that journey, and I hope that people watching are getting out of it that, hey, you can start in one area and think through these different kind of tangential things, and end up somewhere completely different, doing something great in other areas as well. So keep that in mind, folks. We'll go into more on that later. Second, where we want to go next was marketing in healthcare. As I said earlier, started in the mid 80s. It's a pretty new concept. So even when people are greatly talented, even with great talent, there's lots of organizations where the leadership outside of marketing might not understand or appreciate the strategic impact that marketing can have. So we've been hearing kind of a lot of this from market, but I wanted to hear from you. Can data play a role in helping marketing leaders earn a seat at the table?
Data plays a leading role in helping marketing leaders not only earn a seat at the table, but guide the direction of the company. When you think about how you market your organization, if you don't know what's working, you can't fix what's wrong, right? The old adage, you can't manage what you don't measure, is still true, right? No amount of cool technology has fixed that simple basic fact. And when we look at the role that data plays in marketing of telling us who's interested in our stuff, how are people engaging with us, what are the things that they're telling us through their words, through their actions, through their interactions with us, it gives us tremendous insights into how we should be changing and pivoting. So a real simple example, if you think about the way we look at the customer journey lifecycle in healthcare, customer lifetime value actually means the lifetime of that customer, right? It's one of the few industries where, like, yes, you will literally be with us until you die. And there's so many interactions and data points that are captured that are simply not intelligently used. Think about, even if you remove it, you anonymize it, you de-identify it completely. Think about just the sheer number of data points in an EHR, right? How many interactions has this person had with a provider? When you look at like the CVS Aetna merger, that was a brilliant maneuver, because how many times do you see your primary care physician, right? Once, twice, maybe a year, maybe. How many times do you go to CVS? 20 times a month, right? I'll get a pack of chewing gum, get some, some milk, some eggs, get my prescriptions. That merger happened because the healthcare organization needed more and better eyes on the patient. How do we see the patient more often than once a year? From an insurance perspective, from a healthcare perspective, how do we know what this person's buying? When people go to the pharmacy, they use their rewards card. Great. Now you know what they're buying. Now you know what their diet is. Now you know what their non-pharmaceutical interventions are. And all that data can be used to tune your marketing to say, like, hey, we notice in this region, for example, this past week, Ben & Jerry's ice cream was sold out everywhere, right? Why? People are stress eating like crazy. Cigarettes sold out everywhere, right? Beer sold out everywhere. All that data is part of healthcare marketing. All that data could be part of your marketing if you're using it well and you have permission to use it and you're careful with it, to get a pulse for what's happening with your audience, what's happening with your patients in their lives. And one of the really unique things about healthcare marketing is that you can use this data responsibly to guide outcomes, right? You can say, like, hey, we're noticing there's a substantial number of people who are buying, like, just garbage fast food, and it's going up in this region. We know in 20 years' time, we're going to have a major cardiovascular problem in this area if this does not change, if these behaviors don't change. So if you have that data, you can start to help guide and say, hey, you know what? This looks like a food desert. We need to fix this. How can we use marketing's power to communicate with people? These are better choices or worse choices you could make if you want to see your grandkids, graduate college.
Excellent. And Alan, what are some of your perspectives, or did you have any questions on that as well?
Yeah, I think that it definitely, retail is definitely, one of the biggest threats, for healthcare organizations today, right? So as you mentioned, it's just, as a patient, it's much more convenient for me to drop by a Target or CVS or Walgreens, before work, after work, during work. And so having all those data points, definitely can help in helping these organizations guide the patients, guide the consumers through that particular journey. But one of the things that I'm also seeing within healthcare, and would love to kind of get your perspective on this is the amount of data that's available, right? Within the EHRs, now you have behavioral insights. I mean, that's definitely one of the struggles, or the tremendous amount of data silos that healthcare organizations have. How would you suggest these marketers to go about consolidating that data? How do they kind of tease through what's useful and what can be applied for them to bring patients back in the door or bring in, new healthcare consumers?
It depends on your business model too, because one of the things that is changing and is on people's minds in healthcare is, how do we get away from treating illness to treating wellness, right? How do we apply more preventative measures so that we're seeing fewer things like, massive cardiac events and strokes and stuff. And that requires realigning your data to understand and be able to forecast and predict beforehand. Hey, these are some likely things. If you do, basic propensity score modeling on data around like the top 20 conditions, you can get a pretty good predictive perspective. Like, hey, we know that obesity is a pretty big problem, not just in America, but planet wide. We know cardiac disease kills, almost more people than I think almost anything else. We know that COVID-19 is the number 3 killer in the United States, right? When we see what data is available, you're right. There are 2 challenges. One is, where does the data live, and can we get access to it in a way that is safe and permitted, which means a lot of de-identification, a lot of governance and control over the data. And 2, do we have the tools to process it? And that's where the biggest gap is for most marketers in most industries, which is you have the data and you have no idea what to do with it. It's like getting a dump truck full of flour dropped off at your door, but you don't know how to bake. So you're just like, oh, look, here's a mountain of white powder in my driveway. This doesn't really help me do anything except take up space in my driveway. And it is that second part where marketing technology has the ability to offer some benefits, to say like, here, let's help you build systems that can process the data. Let's create storage engines that can analyze it. Let's create machine learning models that can get through the data faster so that you can start looking at the mathematics underneath it and figure out, well, these are the trends, these are the patterns. Right now, marketers don't have that. Right now, marketers have big piles of data and no way to handle it.
Well, hey, that's starting to weave together a really powerful story. And before we jump into that, I just wanted to say hey to Doug and Ali, Elizabeth, Drew, everybody signing in. We really appreciate your comments here. So the picture that I feel like we're creating is, hey, here are some of the capabilities. Here are some of the use cases that help identify those opportunities to be seen as strategic in the organization. And then the technology question is, okay, well, how do we actually operationalize that? How do we get that to where we can see those insights and then act on them? Once that happens, then there comes kind of the question of scrutiny. Once we have identified those and we're acting on these insights, we're taking certain actions in the market, how are we calculating the impact? And I love the way that you began the conversation talking about Urchin, eventually becoming Google Analytics and developing attribution models, because a lot of people struggle with, we believe that marketing had this much of an impact on the patient volumes that have come in or on this particular outcome. So knowing that there's a whole slew of different ways, especially as a data scientist, saw your post the other day about Bayesian methods and multivariate time series modeling and everything like that. We probably don't have to get that level of detail, but just curious, your thoughts, like what are some ideas that people should have when communicating impact, especially in organizations that are kind of new to understanding marketing?
Here's the simple question. We always talk about KPIs in marketing, and everyone has a general idea. I'm curious, how do you two guys define what a KPI is?
For me, I think a KPI is how is marketing, since I'm in marketing, how is marketing measured, and how does that map to the greater organizational objective or initiative, right? So those performance metrics have to translate over to the organizational goal, right? If they don't, then I believe then there's a gap. You have a disconnect between what the marketing organization is doing and where the overall corporate initiative is. toward. So to me, it's imperative that you're mapped to the top level goals that the company is trying to achieve.
Chris, what's your definition of a KPI?
So it's pretty similar to Alan's, where there is there's the overall corporate goals, and then there's, hey, what can my department do? If I'm a physician liaison, what's the impact that I can have? If I'm doing marketing, what's the impact that I can have? So inside of the department, you can focus on things like click-through rates and impressions and things like that. But outside, there has to be that relationship between how the efforts and the outputs, whether you're busy, like whether you're measuring the number of meetings that you're having, what's the impact that has to the overall health of the financial health of the organization? So I look at it kind of as, what are the actions that we're taking versus what's the impact that they have on the strategic goal.
Here's the definition we use with clients for understanding marketing KPIs and defining them. What number are you going to get a bonus for this year? Okay. What number are you going to get a bonus for? If you can't answer that question, you probably should update your LinkedIn profile, because you're not going to be working there very long. And that goes for the person, the department, the organization, and ultimately the hospital or the organization. Like, what are you going to get a bonus for? What are you going to get fired for? What is that number, or 1 to 3 numbers that matters the most? Once you understand that, then you can do an exercise we call KPI mapping. Okay, if number of net new patients is your KPI, and that's the sword you're going to fall on, then what feeds into that? Right? What are the 2 to 3 numbers that feed into that? And then maybe it's, patient inquiries, maybe it's health insurance transfers, whatever it is. Now, what number feeds into that? And if you do that, then you have a very clear idea from your data, what data you absolutely positively have to pay attention to, and what data you're going to model on. One of the things that challenges marketers so much is that, for example, in standard Google Analytics, not the new one, but the standard one, there are 510 dimensions and metrics that you could measure on. Right? There's 500 of these different things you pay attention to. Which one of these are actually important? If you have basic data science capabilities, take your KPI, figure out, you put that as one column in a spreadsheet, and then take everything else that you have, put it in the rest of the spreadsheet, and run a regression analysis. What numbers in this massive collection of data you have any kind of mathematical relationship to the business outcome you care about? Once you know that, then you can start testing it. Okay, did this, just tweets on Tuesdays, there's a correlation. Is there a causative effect? Great, let's tweet twice as much on Tuesdays. And if we see our response variable increase by the same proportion, then we know there's a causal relationship there. A lot of the times, marketers are not the most quantitatively inclined people, and that's okay, because it's equally important to be creative. But doing that analysis will help clarify, out of all the data you have, what are the things that are most important. Then you can start tuning your marketing on that. You can start making decisions. One of the things that we say all the time is data without decisions is just distraction. Right? It's just going to confuse you. It's just going to suck up your time. I mean, you look at people who make dashboards, all these dashboard software companies, they're making these cool dashboards. It looks like, the cockpit of the space shuttle. I'm like, that's not helpful. When we walk into a client and they've got a big dashboard in a command center, like, great, what of all these things here do you actually use to make decisions? They're like, none of them. Like, cool. So why do you have it? I mean, it looks cool, but it's not helping you make any decisions. And that, when it comes to how do we use this data, is the ultimate thing that if you want any marketer to improve, say, what decisions are you going to make today, and what data do you need to make those decisions? That clarifies so much.
Absolutely. I think, I was just having a discussion the other day with one of my colleagues here at Symphony, and I think we were talking about actionable intelligence, right? And, you can measure all you want, but if there's no action tied to it, and it's not triggering and leading to you executing to hit your goal, then, you're not doing it, right? That's the big thing for marketers, is leveraging that data. And so many times we see, healthcare organizations actually do struggle with taking action on that data. They have so much data. And in many cases, there's a lack of transparency to that data, which makes it even more challenging for me to measure and to communicate accordingly. How do I know that this is, working? How do I know that my campaign is driving the patient to come in, because I can't see the data that is being leveraged there. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges that I see with healthcare organizations. But curious, how this would apply in other industries. Like, what are some of the things that they're doing to improve access and improve transparency to kind of the data that they're using?
To your earlier point, Seth Godin has a great quote: "If you're not going to change what you eat or how often you exercise, don't get on the scale." Right? If you're not going to make any changes, don't bother measuring it. And you may work at an organization like that, in which case, again, it's time to update your LinkedIn profile. In terms of what broader organizations are doing, believe it or not, they're not that different from healthcare. We work with some folks in automotive, and they have just as many silos and just as many complexities. Their stuff is a little bit less life and death, literal life and death than healthcare, but they still run into the same challenges. You look at even cutting edge businesses, the most modern companies, the most high tech companies, same challenges. They have more technology to throw at it, but as you can discover, you can buy all the cool appliances you want. If you don't know how to cook, you still are just buying appliances, right? Technology does not fix the problem that you don't know how to cook. You burn water when you boil it. And so for a lot of companies, it comes down to three things. It's the same three things we've been talking about since 1964, when H.J. Levitt first came up with the framework. It's people, process, and technology. The technology is improving dramatically. The processes are questionable in a lot of marketing organizations, and the people are not keeping up with their skills. And that's where organizations are most vulnerable, is actually at the people level, because again, you can buy technology, and technology will help you do things faster. As the old joke about coffee goes, technology helps you do dumb stuff faster. If you're already doing dumb stuff, you can make more mistakes faster. It's only an accelerator. So for companies, when you do attribution analysis, for example, if you don't have all the data, then your attribution model is flawed. Now, the good news is, in terms of encouraging collaboration and cooperation, if you can get a useful model in front of somebody, and that there's compliance issues internally within the marketing organization, you can use that to persuade people. When you present your model before the board of directors or the CEO or the CMO or whoever, you can say like, "Hey, check out this very cool attribution model. Here's exactly what's working." And you bring it up and people go, "Where's my thing? I'm not here." Like, yeah, you're not on here because we were talking last month about, making sure we had access to all the data, and you didn't. So you're not on this chart. Let me show you an example here. I'm going to bring up a screen share if you want to move to screen share view. So this is an example of a machine learning based attribution model. This is my personal website, so there's nothing confidential on here. And the way it works is it takes Google Analytics data in, and it says, in this particular model, which is behind the scenes mathematically, is called Markov chain modeling. Imagine baseball game, a football game, right? You have some people who can run into the end zone and score a touchdown, and then you got some people who have a really good passing game, but they're not going to be the folks who run across the goal line. Your marketing channels are the same way. There's some channels that are going to be really good at being defensive. Some marketing channels are really good at passing, and some marketing channels can sprint down to the end of the field, but somebody needs to get the ball to them. In traditional attribution models, like last touch attribution, you're only ever looking at the person who actually scores the goal. You're not paying attention to the rest of the team, and everybody knows you need an entire team to play football well. If you use machine learning based attribution modeling, you're looking at the contribution of the channel overall to helping your team score. So in this case, when I look at my website for October, organic search was, yes, by far the biggest driver of conversions. And this helps me tune my marketing efforts. No, I need to have a really good SEO game, right? My email newsletter is doing great. All these lives I'm doing on YouTube, that's 0.5%, right? It's like, is it really worth my time to be doing this? It's a valid question. Now, imagine you've got all these different campaigns in your marketing organization, all these efforts that you're putting in. When you run this analysis, you can use this to get buy-in from other people in the organization, because they're looking at this going, hey, I busted my butt putting together this Spotify campaign last month. Answer, why isn't it on here? Well, did you tag it properly? Did you tell us that you were doing it? Did you make sure that we had access to the data? If the answer is no to those questions, then of course you're not going to be on here. Hey, would you like to start working together to actually build an attribution model that gives you credit for the effort you're putting in? And that, again, that's not a technology thing. That's a people thing. So if you can figure out how to hack the people, you can make the technology work better.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Thank you for that answer, because it really closes a strong loop that was kind of getting started with. You've got the seat at the table. Technology's coming into play. We're going through some efforts. We've proven, hey, okay, we're going to go down this direction. But then how do we prove that and tie it to our KPIs? So one thing I wanted to get into next was, just as a personal fan of the podcast, it's just awesome to hear that you're putting your hands on the latest technologies, and I like the fact that the last conversation had some of that in there. So I just wanted to get a little bit more focused, just like with some of the later things that you've seen. Like one of the first podcasts I had heard from you was when we were talking about the BERT model, which is the underlying technology a lot of people might have heard about that can generate a lot of text documents that are actually convincing and seem real. So just like with what you've had your hands on lately and what you've been seeing, what's on the horizon that data enthusiastic marketers, what should we be watching for?
So there's a bunch of different things. This is partially in the machine learning realm. As many folks know, Google Analytics has become sort of the standard for digital marketing measurement for many organizations, mostly because it's free. Google released a new version 3 weeks ago called Google Analytics 4, which is a completely different application. It is totally new from the ground up. It's built on their Firebase technology. And there's a bunch of technical stuff that we don't have time to get into right now. But one of the benefits is that Google gives you a BigQuery database that contains all your raw data. So now any marketer with the technical skills can take that raw data, just a big old table in a database, and start building machine learning models on it. Start doing things like propensity score analysis on individual pages and their channels and users, and really slice and dice the data in ways that were not previously possible for most marketers. That's really, really exciting. And over the next year or two, we're going to see a lot more of that data get more used, better used, and the technology supporting it mature. You mentioned BERT. So BERT stands for bidirectional encoding of representation transformers, and that is for understanding queries. It's not for generation of text. The generation of text comes from OpenAI's GPT models, which is a pre-trained transformers. These are big language models that create language. One of the most powerful uses of them right now is in question and answer scenarios. So right now, a lot of companies have tried with differing degrees of success to create conversational chatbots, things that offer customer service experiences and things on websites. And they have uniformly been lackluster. Some of the newer ones that are using GPT-2 and GPT-3 are creating legitimately lifelike interaction capabilities, ones that you would be hard pressed after some time interacting with them to not know that there isn't a human actually behind the scenes, guiding it. They're trained amazingly. There's some fascinating applications for this for things like behavioral health. Particularly in a pandemic, we have a lot of people who are, suffering from significant mental health impairments from what's happening, what's necessary to keep people alive. These technologies are really, really interesting. But generative technologies in general are extremely interesting right now for what's happening in marketing. There's services like Ava that allow you to generate music, net new music that's never been seen before, and you get a MIDI file that you can then load into something like Final Cut, not Final Cut, Logic, and then you could tune it up, and it's like, okay, the computer kind of got lost here. Let's go and fix this part. Generative text you've seen. There are services like Galgan. In fact, let's do this because Elizabeth is asking, hey, can we show a demo of some of this? Let's do NVIDIA's Galgan, because I think these are things that are impressive. They are not necessarily there's not an immediate healthcare application, but there are definitely plenty of marketing applications for them. Let's see if we can get Galgan to work here. So Galgan looks like Microsoft Paint, right? So let's do some landscape. Let's put how about some grass on the ground here. Let's take the building and do a terrible, terrible house. Right, we're not gonna win any awards for this, right? Put a nice little bridge and maybe put some sky there. How about a couple of terrible clouds? Great. I'm now going to say I want you to use a generative model to create something somewhat photorealistic. Now that's not great because we spent 2 seconds doing it, right? But you can already see that this capability of being able to generate something is very, very powerful, and have machines do this. Coca-Cola has been experimenting with an ad tech server that generates ad creative, not deployment, the actual creative itself at massive scale. In a test a couple of years ago, they created and rolled out 1 million ads, all these variations, distributed them all to the DSP. They then went and looked and culled off 990,000 that didn't perform, retrained their model, and kept running this. So instead of spending 4 to 6 weeks and $1 million on your creative department to try and get one ad out, they had machines crank out 1 million of these and just keep iterating until they find what works. So this kind of technologies, generative technologies, are so fascinating. If you want another one, let's do it right with Transformer. Right, this is a fun one that uses that GPT-2 generative model. Let's go ahead and start writing here with GPT-2, and let's see. Give me a healthcare relevant sentence to start with.
Let's go with COVID-19 cases have been increasing in Houston.
Okay, for the past 3 months. So what it's doing is it's using its huge language model to start generating. So, this is kind of a silly example. Let's do one of the most interesting aspects of healthcare marketing is, and have it autocomplete. And again, what it's doing is it's generating text from huge language models. Now, can this write completely on its own unsupervised? Yes, and it creates word salad. It's not very good. Can it help you autocomplete? Can it help a junior person write a press release? Can it help create blog content? Absolutely. And being able to do these autocompletes, particularly when you start using some of the larger models. These types of technologies, as you can see, this is not theoretical. This is something that you can go and try right now on your own and play with it, play with all the different settings. So what's happening is that these technologies keep getting better and better and better until you get to a point where the machines will be able to generate credible content. One of the challenges that is going to be a big problem for many marketers is there will be a huge gulf between the haves and the have-nots, not in terms of finances, but in terms of who can use technology and who can't. Because if you are a 3-person marketing team in a market and you've got another 3-person marketing team that has AI capabilities, they're going to create 100, 200, 1,000 times more content than you will. They will be able to just saturate an area, a field, and you won't be able to deal with that. To Elizabeth's question about can it pull examples or get more specific, this one can't because this is just a demo, but you can 100% use the underlying models and train them. Again, that requires substantial expertise, but it is something that you can do. You can also look at some of the other models. So here's one that's trained on archive papers. So if you're trying to create a paper using academic writing, you would use that instead of the general model. So let's do. And And now you're going to get different language because it's trained on academic papers that have been published, as opposed to a general corpus of language from all over the web. Someone who's writing a paper that's going to go into the New England Journal of Medicine hopefully writes differently than somebody on Reddit.
Wow. This is by far very interesting. I could definitely see how this can help marketers. It's pretty amazing, especially as you can continue to improve on it, and apply different types of models. I think from a differentiation perspective, I think it's interesting because there's a lot of content out there right now as a healthcare organization or as a marketing organization. One of the key things that we focus on is differentiation. And, within the digital model, your differentiation and the way that you message, you may have a 2-week lead before your competitor comes in or someone else comes in and kind of takes that language. And then now you're back to the drawing board. So it'd be interesting to see how this all pans out and plays out as it continues to evolve.
Yeah. One of the really powerful applications I like about stuff like this is in a relatively new part of natural language processing called abstractive summarization, which is you give it a source piece of content and you say, write me a short abstract, give me 10% of the length. When you think about the number of papers that are showing up on bioRxiv or even just stories in like Stat News and the New England Journal of Medicine about COVID-19, it would be nice if you could have the machine just give you a 1-paragraph summary of each article instead of having to read through every single one. It can. GPT-2 does it. GPT-3 does it better. The T5 transformer from Google does it reasonably well. And these give us, if you think about it, it could give you substantially better marketing content, because now instead of having to, get subject matter experts to digest down a 20-page paper, you can have a machine give you the 1-paragraph summary, and that's what goes in your hospital newsletter, right? Your hospital newsletter can be a roundup of the very best content, scored by whatever metrics you have that you use for it, but summarized by machines to be relevant so that your stuff that you're publishing all the time is always the best of what's out there. That is a substantial advantage. We have a project right now for one of the hospitals in the nation where we're curating content for them to help them assemble their newsletter and their social media content, and we ship them files and here's the best of the best that's out there that we've been able to identify with machine learning, and it saves them from spending 40 to 80 hours a month, curating this content. And B, it's the stuff that performed well already. So we know this is the good stuff. And now it's just a question of getting it packaged up for them. When you think about what search engines need, Google has made it very clear that they are looking for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness in their quality rating guidelines documents. Even in their podcast, they tell you exactly how Google's search engine works. If you know that, you can then start creating content that feeds those things, right? Summaries of of papers will have inherently very different language than just some marketing person trying to write healthcare content. You'll check off the box. They'll check the box on more of those words and phrases that indicate yes, you are pulling from credible, authoritative content, and you will transform your healthcare marketing to be more reputable by using reputable content as the base.
So this part is really powerful because it helps people get a grasp on, hey, there's all this new stuff, there's all these new announcements, but what are some applications? What can I be looking at over the next year or two that might be applicable for my organization, my position as somebody who's influencing patients? But on the flip side, there's all kinds of stuff that people might have been looking over, technologies that didn't get the love that they deserve. Curious if there's anything that's like kind of hiding under people's noses that, hey, we should be utilizing this more.
Statistical computing is drastically underused. There are many things that are happening in the AI and machine learning world. People are trying all these really fancy new models, and they perform maybe 1 percentage point better than classical models. For example, in time series forecast, people are trying all these crazy neural network combinations, massively expensive compute costs, and they don't perform any better than an old-fashioned ARIMA model from stats, your graduate stats course. ARIMA models have been around forever, and they are still best in class because nothing has been able to beat them yet in terms of forecasting performance. There's a tremendous amount of stuff that's out there that in the hospital and healthcare setting, is really powerful that you're not paying attention to. So I mentioned earlier, propensity score modeling is done a lot to, in a case where you cannot have an A/B clinical trial. So you're essentially trying to denoise a result. This village had wells, this village did not have wells. And you're trying to use existing healthcare data to understand the importance of that treatment. There are so many bioinformatics and biostatistics techniques that your hospital or your healthcare institution probably is already using in the context of healthcare that you can pick up and port and plug into marketing. That same technique that you use to understand a treatment in a drug trial works just fine for email marketing. In fact, it works better for email marketing because there are fewer confounding factors, right? It's also less life or death. Whether your email open rate went up or not is not going to kill somebody. But there's so many of those techniques that people probably in your institution are using all the time that you're not giving them enough attention. You're not saying, hey, we already have expertise on staff to solve this problem. So one of the things that is probably, I think, is so important is, hey, you should be getting together with your folks that are in bioinformatics and biostatistics and saying, hey, how would you solve this problem? And just learn from them. Use the expertise you're already paying for to boost your marketing.
Really, really solid point. Especially there's been so much. There are so many algorithms and so many methods that get developed by healthcare. So it was awesome to hear. Hey, you were talking about automotive industry and other industries having a lot of the same challenges, access to data, a lot of the pains that we're going through. We often say healthcare is behind, but when it comes to things like survival analysis or a lot of the recommender systems that are helping to recommend different products or how Netflix recommends the videos that you watch, those are actually based heavily on the algorithms that came out of healthcare. So yeah, if we can cross those walls, and that's part of why we have this conversation, is there's marketers on here, but there's also people with IT and other backgrounds, and we want to break down those walls and get people thinking about how they can work together, because healthcare is ahead in a lot of areas, and that's kind of underappreciated. So
more importantly, healthcare has to do it because literal lives are on the line, right? And so the techniques have to be proven. They can't be guesswork, because you will kill people if you're wrong. Once you know that an algorithm will not kill somebody, then picking it up and moving into marketing is a pretty safe bet.
Good source for them there. So we're coming close, but I love that thought. Healthcare, you have a higher calling that's applied here, and marketing is part of the delivery process, because it gets people. It's the first thing about how people think about the way they treat their care. But so a lot of the topics, Christopher, that we've covered today are things that were extremely recent, that required a lot of study, learning and research on your end to make sure that you're sussing out and helping your clients deal with the real. So I think a lot of the reason people are here is because they're lifelong learners. And I just I wanted to just hear from you, or have you tell your advice for the people that are lifelong learners and data enthusiasts out there, like what they can focus on to help better their careers.
So there's a few things. One, you obviously should be continuing with your formal professional development training, right? Two, you should be networking with your colleagues within your institutions. And three, you should be listening to more podcasts. But not just listening to podcasts, because look, podcasts take time, right? The average human speaks between 150 to 200 words per minute. Your average reading speed is anywhere from 250 to 400 words per minute. You can read and skim way faster than you can listen. One of the tools I use, and in fact, if you want to put a link, it's trustinsights.ai/otter, OTTR, for the link to try this out for free for 30 days. I take other people's podcasts and I put them into Otter, and then I can go through and read very, very quickly what has happened. So this is a 52-minute conversation with Dr. Fauci about COVID-19, and I will go in here and read through this, look at the summary, see, I can find on specific parts of the conversation that I care about and not have to sit through the entire show. I'll pull in 10 or 15 or 20 of these shows a day just to do analysis. This is for my daily newsletter that I do on the pandemic, but this is just as applicable for all the marketing podcasts that are out there. If you don't want to, listen to a couple of guys, banter for 30 minutes just to get one piece of information, use transcription software, again, powered by AI, in order to get to just the good stuff. If you go some shows provide them for you. Search Off the Record is one of my favorite podcasts. I will tell you this: it's one of my inside secrets for understanding Google, because this is a podcast put together by their developers. These are the people who are building the engines themselves. And when you go in and you read their transcript, you will see there's a lot of fluffy BS, right? Like, they're all telling jokes and things. And then about 20 minutes into the show, they start getting into, oh, this is how we built it. And then you could go, oh, now I know how to reverse engineer this to tune my content for what you are building. Like they gave away on one of the shows, they use a version of Chrome to render every single web page that goes into Google. So Chrome is actually loading it. Millions of instances of Chrome are simplifying and rendering HTML in order to feed Google's ranking engine. Great. That means I now know, okay, I need it to test my hospital website in Chrome with the developer tools turned on and see what Google sees and help me understand, oh, this is why I don't rank better than my competing hospital, because my website, according to Chrome, really sucks, right? But you wouldn't know that unless you were diving into the podcasts and digging out and go, that's what's happening behind the scenes. Now, you do need a little bit of the jargon to understand what the developers are talking, because they're developers, right? They're software developers. But this will help you get up to speed way faster, because what they're talking about now will eventually make it to, like, the healthcare. If you go to like the healthcare marketing conferences, someone on stage will be talking about this in 2 years, right? Because a lot of what's talked about on stage is way behind what's actually happening right now. So you can jump to the front of the line, learn the stuff, apply it now. And maybe it's you on stage in a year saying, hey, here's some old advice that's still newer than what you're going to hear from the next guy.
Well, Chris, this has been fantastic. Alan, thank you for co-hosting. Any final words before we jump off? Chris?
If you want to stay in touch, go to trustinsights.ai. That's where you can find me, my company, and all that stuff. We got all of our podcasts and shows and things over there. The one thing I think would be useful is we have a weekly newsletter you can find on this website. Has fresh data every week. So like this past week, we were looking at Discord and Slack, the amount of usage there is. Last week, we were looking at Instagram TV usage. And if you have, requests like, what would this look like for a healthcare specific one? Let us know. We do stuff like that all the time. But happy to answer questions and things. And we'll see you out on the interwebs.
All right, fantastic. Everybody, we appreciate you sticking on with us and taking part in some learning and learning how to jump ahead in line, like Chris is saying. One thing that we're emphasizing is we're continuing this type of learning next week. Starting next week, there's a series called Health AI University. It's designed for healthcare leaders, for non-technical people within healthcare to just get a grasp on, hey, how do we understand the basics, and how do everybody in healthcare is going to be making decisions on AI-based products, not necessarily developing but making decisions. So we just wanted to provide some baselines and, hey, here's what's going through the mind of a data scientist. Here's how you compare various projects and solutions. So we'll drop the link to that as well. Data Science University, that what we're doing, starting that next week. And also for our regular show, we'll be talking to Kenneth Mwangi, who is the senior actuarial analyst at Banner Health. And he's got a lot to share about how healthcare finance works and help you navigate through the financial side of the other players in the house that you're working with. Again, thank you very much, Karen. We strive to provide positive distractions here. Drew, awesome seeing you. Elizabeth, loved your questions. Janae, good seeing you again. And hope you have a great weekend.
Take care, everyone.